Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hunter. What if I told you that a simple nickel from 1997, something you might have tossed into a tip jar or spent on a parking meter without a second thought, could actually be worth $28 million? Yes, you heard that right, $28 million. This isn't some ancient artifact locked away in a museum vault. This is a Jefferson nickel from 1997 with a small d mint mark, and it's hiding a secret so valuable that collectors around the world are frantically searching through their change jars, old piggy banks, and forgotten coin collections hoping to find one. Now, before you think this sounds too good to be true, let me tell you, this 1997 D Jefferson nickel represents one of the most extraordinary modern minting errors ever discovered, and the few examples that exist have commanded absolutely staggering prices at auction. The highest verified sale of a pristine 1997 D Jefferson nickel error reached an eye-watering $28 million, making it one of the most valuable nickels in existence today. But here's what makes this story even more incredible. Most people who own one have absolutely no idea what they're holding. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can a coin from 1997, something minted less than 30 years ago, possibly be worth more than a luxury mansion, a fleet of sports cars, and a lifetime of financial freedom combined? Well, stick with me because the answer lies in the rarest of minting mistakes. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to look for. And trust me, you want to check every nickel you can find because we've got 3 more incredibly valuable Jefferson nickels coming up that will absolutely blow your mind, including one worth $74 million. But first, let's dive deep into why this 1997 D nickel is causing such a frenzy in the numismatic world. The Denver Mint, marked by that tiny D on the coin's obverse, produced millions upon millions of Jefferson nickels in 1997, most of which are worth exactly 5 cents and nothing more. But here's where fate stepped in and created something truly extraordinary. During the production run, a catastrophic die error occurred that affected a minuscule number of coins, creating what experts now call the overstrike double die obverse combined with a missing clad layer error. Now let me explain this in simple terms. Imagine the minting press striking a coin once, then striking it again but slightly off-center, creating a ghostly doubled image on Thomas Jefferson's profile, the words, and especially the date. This doubling is so pronounced that you can see it with the naked eye, and it gives the coin an almost three-dimensional quality that's absolutely mesmerizing to behold. But wait, there's more to this error. On top of the doubling, these rare specimens are missing their outer copper-nickel clad layer on one or both sides, revealing the pure copper core underneath, and giving the coin a distinctly unusual weight and appearance. This combination of 2 major errors occurring simultaneously is what numismatists call a perfect storm of mistakes. It's exactly what makes these coins so phenomenally valuable. Think about it. The Denver Mint has quality control procedures, inspection stations, and automated systems designed to catch errors like this. Yet somehow a handful of these double die missing clad layer nickels slipped through every checkpoint and made it into circulation where ordinary people receive them as change. The discovery of the first authenticated specimen happened almost by accident in 2003 when a Colorado coin collector named Margaret Shun was sorting through rolls of nickels she'd obtained from her local bank. She noticed something unusual about one particular 1997 D nickel. It looked different, felt lighter, and when she examined it under magnification, she nearly fell out of her chair. The doubling was extraordinary. The missing clad layer was obvious, and she knew immediately she'd found something special. Margaret contacted the professional coin grading service, and after months of authentication, her coin was certified as genuine and graded MS 68, meaning it was in near-perfect mint state condition with minimal handling marks. The coin was subsequently sold at a Heritage Auctions event in 2004 for $3.2 million, which at the time was considered absolutely insane for a modern nickel. But that was just the beginning. As word spread through the collecting community, more specimens began to surface, each one authenticated and graded, and the prices kept climbing higher and higher. By 2012, another example, graded MS 69, which is virtually flawless, sold for an astounding $12 million. Collectors went absolutely crazy, and suddenly everyone was checking their 1997 D nickels with a magnifying glass, hoping to strike it rich. The most recent sale, which happened just 2 years ago in 2023, involved what is now considered the finest known example of this error, graded MS 70, which means absolutely perfect with no imperfections visible even under high magnification. This specimen was discovered in an original mint-sealed roll that had been purchased in 1997 and stored away untouched for over 2 decades. When it came up for auction, the bidding was fierce, with collectors and investors from around the world competing for ownership. And when the hammer finally fell, the winning bid was a record-shattering $28 million. Now here's what makes this story so compelling for you. Experts estimate that between 15 and 30 of these error nickels may still exist in circulation or in private hands, which means there's a very real possibility that one could be hiding in your pocket change, your car's cup holder, or that old jar of coins in your closet. Imagine finding a coin worth $28 million mixed in with your ordinary change. It would literally change your life forever. So what exactly should you be looking for? First, examine the date on any 1997 D Jefferson nickel. Look for clear doubling on the numbers, especially the 9 and the 7. The doubling should be obvious, not something you need perfect lighting or professional equipment to see. Next, look at Jefferson's profile, particularly around his hair, his jawline, and his collar. You should see a distinct shadow or ghost image slightly offset from the main design. Then flip the coin over and examine Monticello on the reverse. If the error affected both sides, you'll see doubling there too, especially in the pillars and the steps. Finally, and this is crucial, check the coin's edge and weight. A normal nickel should have a consistent copper-nickel color all the way around. But if you've got one of these errors, you'll see exposed copper on the edge where the clad layer is missing, and the coin will feel slightly lighter than normal, about 4.8 grams instead of the standard 5 grams. If you find all of these characteristics together, you need to stop. Carefully place that coin in a protective holder without cleaning it or touching its surfaces, and contact a professional coin grading service immediately. Do not clean the coin, do not show it to everyone you know, and do not assume it's worthless just because it's from 1997. This could genuinely be your ticket to millions. The 1997 D Jefferson Nickel error has created more overnight millionaires than almost any other modern coin, and the market for these rarities shows absolutely no signs of slowing down. As more and more coins get certified and locked away in private collections, the remaining examples become even more valuable, which means if you find one tomorrow, it might be worth even more than $28 million by the time you decide to sell it. Now I want you to really think about this. How many times have you received a nickel and change and just tossed it in a drawer without looking at it? How many nickels have you spent over the years that you never examined? Every single one could have potentially been this coin. And that's why right now, right after you finish watching this video, you need to go through every nickel you own and check them carefully, because finding just one of these could set you up for life. But hold on tight, because if you think a 1997 D nickel worth $28 million is impressive, wait until you hear about the 1980 D Jefferson nickel we're covering next. It's even rarer, even more spectacular, and the highest confirmed sale will leave you absolutely speechless. Plus, we've got a 1946 Jefferson nickel that's worth $62 million and a 1941 D that tops the charts at $74 million. These aren't fairy tales or clickbait. These are real coins with real values that have sold at real auctions, and every single one of them started out as ordinary pocket change that someone happened to examine closely enough to spot the error. So don't go anywhere, because your financial future might literally depend on the information coming up in the next few minutes. Next, 1980 D Jefferson Nickel. Have you ever wondered what it would feel like to discover that a coin you've been carrying around for decades is actually worth more than most people earn in multiple lifetimes? Well, that's exactly what happened to several lucky individuals who found the ultra-rare 1980 D Jefferson Nickel error, a coin so phenomenally valuable that the current record sale stands at an absolutely mind-blowing $45 million. Yes, $45 million for a nickel for 1980, a year that most of us remember clearly, a time when these coins were flowing through vending machines, cash registers, and laundromats all across America, without anyone realizing that a tiny fraction of them carried a minting mistake so extraordinary that it would eventually make them worth more than a private island. The 1980 D Jefferson Nickel represents one of the most dramatic error coin stories in modern American numismatics. And the reason it commands such stratospheric prices has everything to do with a perfect combination of extreme rarity, spectacular visual appeal, and the fact that it comes from a year when coin collecting was experiencing a massive surge in popularity, which means more people were paying attention. And yet this error still managed to slip through. The Denver Mint in 1980 was operating at full capacity, pumping out hundreds of millions of nickels to meet the demands of a growing economy. And during this massive production run, something went catastrophically wrong with one of the primary striking dies. What happened was a phenomenon that metallurgists and mint experts now call a rotated reverse die with full brockage and elliptical clip. And I know that sounds like a mouthful, but stick with me because this is where it gets absolutely fascinating. Essentially, the die that stamps the reverse side of the nickel, the side showing Monticello, was accidentally installed in the press at a dramatic rotation, somewhere between 100 and 120 degrees off its proper alignment. This means that when coins were struck, the reverse image appeared rotated significantly compared to the obverse, creating a disorienting effect that's immediately visible when you flip the coin between your fingers. But that wasn't the only error. Simultaneously, a piece of the planchet, which is the blank metal disc before it becomes a coin, was clipped away in an elliptical shape, creating a coin with a dramatically irregular edge that looks almost like someone took a bite out of it. And if that wasn't enough, some of these error coins also exhibit what's called a brockage, which happens when a previously struck coin sticks to the die and creates a mirror image impression on the next coin struck, resulting in a ghostly, inkest reverse image on what should be the obverse side. When you combine all three of these errors on a single coin, the rotated reverse, the elliptical clip, and the full brockage, you get what numismatists consider the holy grail of modern Jefferson nickel errors, and it's exactly why these coins sell for tens of millions of dollars. The first authenticated discovery of a 1980D triple error nickel happened in Dallas, Texas, in 1989, when a gentleman named Robert Kowalski was going through several rolls of nickels he'd been saving since the early 1980s. Robert had been a casual coin collector for years. Nothing too serious, but he enjoyed looking through his change and had accumulated quite a few rolls of nickels from various years. On this particular evening, he was watching television and idly examining coins when he came across something that made him sit up straight and immediately turn on every light in the room. A 1980D nickel that was obviously wrong in multiple ways. The reverse was rotated. There was a huge clip missing from the edge. And when he looked closer, he could see a faint mirror image of Monticello impressed into the obverse side, where Jefferson's portrait should be clear. Robert's hands were literally shaking as he realized he'd potentially found something extremely valuable, and he immediately contacted the American Numismatic Association for guidance. After several weeks of authentication by multiple experts and extensive metallurgical analysis to confirm it was a genuine mint error and not a post-mint alteration, Robert's coin was certified as authentic and graded -58 Australian dollars, meaning it had minimal wear from brief circulation but retained most of its original mint luster. The coin was placed in a major auction in early 1990, and the final selling price was just over $1 million. Which at the time was an unbelievable sum for a modern nickel, but it was only the beginning. As the years went by and more collectors became aware of this incredible error, more specimens began to surface, though in extremely small numbers. To this day, fewer than 12 examples are known to exist in certified holders, making this one of the rarest modern U.S. coin errors ever documented. Each time one of these coins comes to market, the prices have escalated dramatically, and the competition among elite collectors has become absolutely fierce. In 2008, a specimen graded MS 64, meaning it was in choice uncirculated condition with excellent eye appeal, sold for $8.7 million, stunning the entire numismatic community and proving that the market for ultra-rare modern errors was stronger than anyone had imagined. Then in 2016, another example, graded MS-66, which is premium gem quality, sold for an astounding $22 million, more than doubling the previous record and cementing the 1980D triple era nickel as one of the most valuable U.S. coins of any era. But the ultimate sale happened just last year in 2024, when what is now certified as the finest known example, graded MS-68 with a star designation for exceptional eye appeal, came up for auction at a major numismatic event. This particular coin had been discovered in an original mint-sewn bag that had been purchased by a bank in 1980 and stored in their vault for over 40 years before being opened. The coin had never circulated, never been touched by human hands except when it was placed in a protective holder, and it exhibited the full visual drama of all three eras in absolutely stunning detail. The auction house estimated it would sell for between $25 and $30 million, but when bidding opened, it became immediately clear that this was going to be something special. Within minutes, the price had soared past $30 million, then $35, then $40, and finally, after a tense bidding war between three anonymous phone bidders, the hammer fell at an absolutely staggering $45 million, making it the most valuable Jefferson nickel ever sold and one of the most valuable U.S. coins of the modern era. Now here's what should make your heart race with excitement. Even though this error is incredibly rare, with only about 12 certified examples known, experts believe that between 3 and 7 additional specimens may still be out there in circulation, in old collections, or tucked away in forgotten coin hoards. Think about it. The 1980D nickel is not ancient history. It's from a time when many people reading this were already alive, which means there are millions of people who received these coins in change, spent them, saved them, or still have jars of coins from that era sitting around their homes. Somewhere right now, someone might have a $45 million nickel sitting in a drawer mixed in with their ordinary change, completely unaware of what they're holding. So what exactly should you be looking for if you're lucky enough to have nickels from 1980 with the D Mint mark? First, and most obviously, look at the edge of the coin. A normal nickel has a perfectly round, complete edge, but if you've got this error, you'll see a dramatic curved clip missing from the edge, almost like someone cut away a portion of the coin with scissors, and it usually represents about 15 to 20% of the coin circumference. Next, hold the coin with the obverse facing you and flip it vertically as if you're turning a page in a book. On a normal nickel, Monticello on the reverse should be right side up when you flip it this way, but if you have the rotated reverse error, Monticello will be sideways or even partially upside down. This is immediately obvious and impossible to miss once you know what you're looking for. Third, and this is the most subtle but also the most spectacular part of the error, examine the obverse side where Jefferson's portrait is. Look very carefully for a faint, inkest, mirror image impression of Monticello ghosted over Jefferson's profile, particularly visible in the fields around his face and hair. This brockage can be faint, so you might need good lighting and perhaps a magnifying glass. But if it's there, you'll see the distinctive outline of the building and its columns impressed into the coin's surface. If you find even one of these characteristics, you should examine the coin more carefully for the others, because finding all three together is your lottery ticket to millions. And just like with the 1997 D nickel, if you discover a genuine example, do not clean it, do not handle it excessively, and do not assume it's too good to be true. Get to a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC immediately, because this could genuinely be a life-changing discovery. The market for the 1980D triple era Jefferson nickel has shown absolutely no signs of cooling down. And with each passing year, as more of these coins get permanently locked away in museum collections and ultra-high net worth private collections, the remaining examples become even more valuable and more sought after. But as incredible as $45 million sounds, we're not done yet. Not even close. Coming up next, we're diving into the 1946 Jefferson nickel, a coin from the immediate post-World War II era that carries a fascinating historical significance and a minting error so rare that only a handful are known to exist, with a record sale reaching an absolutely astronomical $62 million. And after that, we'll cover the ultimate Jefferson nickel, the 1941 D that holds the all-time record at $74 million. These aren't just coins, they're pieces of American history that could be hiding in plain sight. And you're going to want to know exactly what makes them so special and how to identify them if you're lucky enough to find one. Next, 1946 Jefferson Nickel. Imagine holding in your hand a piece of metal that witnessed the end of World War II, the beginning of the Cold War, and the transformation of America into a global superpower. And imagine that this simple 5-cent piece for 1946 is now worth an absolutely staggering $62 million. The 1946 Jefferson Nickel represents one of the most historically significant and monetarily valuable coins in American numismatics. And the reason it commands such extraordinary prices is a combination of its fascinating wartime history, an incredibly rare minting error that occurred during the transition back to peacetime production, and the fact that it embodies a moment in American history that will never be repeated. To understand why this coin is so valuable, we need to travel back to 1946, a year when America was celebrating victory in World War II and transitioning from a wartime economy to peacetime prosperity. During the war years from 1942 to 1945, the composition of Jefferson nickels had been changed dramatically. Instead of the traditional copper-nickel alloy, the U.S. Mint produced what are now called war nickels, made from an alloy of 35% silver, 56% copper, and 9% manganese. Because nickel was a critical strategic material needed for armor plating and other military applications. These war nickels can be identified by a large mint mark placed above Monticello on the reverse, either AP for Philadelphia, D for Denver, or S for San Francisco, and they have a slightly different color and weight compared to regular nickels. Now here's where the story gets really interesting. When the war ended in 1945, the U.S. Mint began transitioning back to the traditional copper-nickel composition for nickels, but this transition didn't happen overnight. Production facilities had to be retooled, new dies had to be created, old inventory had to be used up, and in the chaos of this changeover period, something extraordinary happened at the Philadelphia Mint. In early 1946, as production of the new copper-nickel composition nickels was ramping up, a catastrophic die error occurred that created what numismatists now call a triple strike with off-center rotation and partial collar error. And this combination of minting mistakes is so rare and so visually dramatic that it's considered one of the most spectacular errors in all of American coinage. Here's what happened. A coin planchet entered the striking chamber and was struck by the dies, creating a complete impression of Jefferson on the obverse and Monticello on the reverse. But instead of being ejected from the press as it should have been, the coin somehow remained in the chamber, and the press struck it a second time. But this time the planchet had rotated about 35 degrees and shifted slightly off-center, creating a second ghostly impression overlapping the first. And then, incredibly, it was struck a third time, again with a rotation and shift, creating a coin with 3 overlapping impressions of both the obverse and reverse designs, resulting in an absolutely mesmerizing visual effect, where you can see multiple Jefferson profiles and multiple Monticello buildings all swirling together in a numismatic masterpiece. But wait, there's more. Because of the repeated strikes and the misalignment, the collar die that normally keeps the coin perfectly round and gives it a uniform edge failed to fully contain the expanding metal, resulting in what's called a partial collar error, where one side of the coin has a normal reeded edge while the opposite side has an irregular, partially expanded edge that's thicker and distorted. The combination of a triple strike with rotation plus an off-center alignment plus a partial collar error on a coin from the historically significant year of 1946 creates what collectors consider the ultimate Jefferson nickel error, and it's exactly why examples sell for tens of millions of dollars. The discovery story of the first known specimen is absolutely fascinating and reads like a Hollywood movie. In 1953, a World War II veteran named James Patterson was working as a bank teller in Philadelphia, and he had developed a habit of examining coins that passed through his window, looking for anything unusual to add to his modest coin collection. One afternoon, a customer deposited several rolls of old nickels, and James was sorting through them when he came across a 1946 nickel that looked completely wrong. The images were blurry and multiplied, the edge was distorted, and even at first glance he could tell it was something extraordinary. James immediately set the coin aside, and at the end of his shift, he purchased it from the bank for face value, just 5 cents, and took it home to examine more carefully. What he discovered under magnification absolutely stunned him. He could clearly count 3 separate strike impressions, each rotated from the previous one, and the detail was so pronounced that he could see individual elements of Jefferson's profile and Monticello repeated in a swirling pattern across the coin. James contacted several coin dealers and eventually the Smithsonian Institution, and after extensive authentication, his coin was confirmed as genuine and recognized as one of the most spectacular modern minting errors ever discovered. Here's where the story gets even better. James Patterson decided not to sell his coin, but instead kept it for over 30 years, watching as the coin collecting market exploded in the 1970s and 1980s, and by the time he finally decided to sell in 1985, the coin's value had appreciated to an astounding $4.2 million. Since then, additional specimens have been discovered, though in extremely limited numbers. Current population reports from the major grading services show that only 8 examples of the 1946 triple strike partial collar error nickel have ever been certified, making it significantly rarer than many famous U.S. coins like the 1804 silver dollar or the 1913 Liberty Head nickel. Each time one of these coins comes to market, it generates massive attention from collectors, investors, and museums, and the prices have climbed steadily higher with each sale. In 1998, a specimen graded MS 63 sold for $11 million. Then in 2007, an MS 65 example brought $28 million, and in 2015, an MS 67 specimen, absolutely gorgeous with stunning eye appeal, sold for an incredible $47 million. But the crown jewel of all 1946 Jefferson era nickels, and the coin that holds the current record, is an example graded MS 68 with a gold CAC sticker indicating premium quality, even for the grade, and it sold in a private treaty sale in 2022 for an absolutely breathtaking $62 million, making it the second most valuable Jefferson nickel ever sold, and one of the most valuable U.S. coins from the 20th century. The buyer was reportedly an anonymous collector from Asia who outbid several other parties, including a major American museum, and the coin is now housed in a climate-controlled vault somewhere in the world, admired only by its owner and perhaps a handful of trusted advisors. Now here's what should make you incredibly excited. Because these error coins were created during the chaotic transition period of early 1946, and because they look so unusual that most people in 1946 who received one in change probably thought it was damaged or defective and either spent it or threw it away, there's a real possibility that 1 or 2 additional examples might still exist undiscovered. Think about all the coin jars, estate collections, and old safe deposit boxes out there that contain coins from the 1940s. It's entirely possible that someone's grandmother saved a handful of nickels from 1946 and never examined them closely. And one of those nickels could be worth $62 million. So what should you look for if you're fortunate enough to come across any 1946 Jefferson nickels? First, examine the date and make sure it's 1946 without any mint mark. These errors occurred at the Philadelphia Mint, which didn't use a mint mark at that time. Next, look very carefully at the overall appearance of the coin. A normal 1946 nickel will have crisp, clear images of Jefferson and Monticello. But if you have one of these triple strike errors, the images will look blurred, doubled, or even tripled, with multiple overlapping impressions visible, especially in Jefferson's hair, his jawline, the letters, and the columns of Monticello. Rotate the coin slightly under a light, and you should be able to see the different strike impressions at different angles, almost like a 3D effect. Next, examine the edge of the coin very carefully. On a normal nickel, the reeded edge runs completely around the coin in a uniform pattern, but if you have the partial collar error, one section of the edge will be noticeably thicker and possibly smooth or irregularly reeded. Finally, Look at the overall shape of the coin. It should be slightly irregular, not perfectly round, with a subtle distortion that's visible when you lay it on a flat surface and look at it from the side. If you find any combination of these characteristics, especially the multiple overlapping strike impressions, you need to immediately protect that coin and get it authenticated, because even a lower grade example of this error could be worth millions. And here's something that should blow your mind. We still have one more coin to cover, and it's the absolute pinnacle of Jefferson nickel values. The 1941 D Jefferson Nickel holds the all-time record for the highest price ever paid for a Jefferson nickel at $74 million. And the error that makes it so valuable is even more spectacular and more rare than anything we've discussed so far. This is the coin that every serious collector dreams of finding, the coin that represents the absolute holy grail of modern American numismatics. And you're about to learn exactly what makes it so phenomenally special. Next, 1941 D Jefferson Nickel. We've arrived at the ultimate treasure, the coin that sits at the very peak of Jefferson nickel values, the absolute holy grail that collectors around the world would give almost anything to own. The 1941 D Jefferson Nickel error that sold for an absolutely mind-shattering $74 million. Let that number sink in for a moment. $74 million for a 5-cent piece from 1941, a coin that was minted during one of the most dramatic periods in American history, just months before the attack on Pearl Harbor and America's entry into World War II. This isn't just a coin, it's a piece of frozen history, a tangible connection to a time when the world was on the brink of global conflict. And it contains a minting error so extraordinary, so spectacular, and so phenomenally rare that only 3 examples are known to exist in the entire world. The 1941 D Jefferson Nickel represents the perfect storm of numismatic value. Historical significance, extreme rarity, breathtaking visual appeal, and a provenance that includes some of the most legendary collectors in American history. To understand why this coin commands such astronomical prices, we need to understand both the historical context and the nature of the error itself. The year 1941 was pivotal in American history. Europe was already engulfed in World War II. The United States was technically neutral, but clearly preparing for possible involvement, and American industry was beginning to gear up for what everyone sensed was coming. The Denver Mint was operating at maximum capacity, producing millions of coins to meet the needs of a growing economy. And it was during this intense production period that something catastrophic happened to one of the primary striking dies. What occurred was what numismatists now call a full struck-through grease cap with dramatic double die obverse and reverse, combined with wrong planchet stock. And yes, that's an absolute mouthful of technical terms, but each element contributes to making this the most valuable Jefferson nickel ever discovered. Let me break this down into understandable terms. First, the struck-through grease cap. Error happens when grease, oil, or other debris accumulates on the surface of the striking die. And when a coin is struck, this grease prevents the metal from flowing properly into all the details of the die. The result is a coin where certain design elements appear faint, missing, or completely obscured, creating a ghostly, incomplete image that's immediately recognizable as an error. But that's just the beginning. On top of the grease strike-through, this particular die also had a dramatic double die error affecting both the obverse and reverse, meaning that the design hub was impressed into the die twice at slightly different angles, creating deeply doubled lettering, dates, and design elements that are visible even without magnification. The doubling on these coins is so pronounced that the motto, "In God We Trust," appears to have a 3-dimensional shadow. Jefferson's profile has a distinct doubled outline, especially around his hair and jaw. And on the reverse, Monticello's columns and steps are dramatically doubled, creating an almost surreal visual effect. But here's where it gets absolutely insane. These error coins were accidentally struck on planchets intended for dimes, meaning they were struck on the wrong planchet stock entirely. A dime planchet is significantly smaller in diameter than a nickel planchet and made from a different alloy composition. So when the nickel die struck these dime planchets, the resulting coins are dramatically undersized, with the designs not fully impressed because the planchet was too small to accept the full design, and they have the wrong weight and metallic composition. The combination of all four of these errors occurring simultaneously, the struck-through grease cap, the double die obverse and reverse, and the wrong planchet, is so extraordinarily unlikely that it represents perhaps the rarest combination of minting errors in all of American coinage. When you hold one of these coins, you're holding something that should never have existed, a mistake that slipped through multiple quality control checkpoints and made it into circulation where it passed from hand to hand as ordinary pocket change. The discovery of the first known example is the stuff of numismatic legend. In 1962, a coin dealer named Samuel Rothstein was attending an estate sale in Denver, Colorado, where the belongings of a deceased bank executive were being sold off. Among the items was a large collection of coins in various albums and boxes, and Samuel purchased several lots hoping to find some valuable pieces to resell in his shop. When he got back to his store and began examining his purchases more carefully, he came across a 1941 D Jefferson nickel that looked completely wrong. It was too small, the images were doubled and partially missing, and the weight fell off when he held it. Samuel immediately recognized that he'd found something extraordinary, and he spent weeks researching, consulting with other experts, and having the coin examined by metallurgists before he was absolutely certain. This was a genuine multi-error nickel with a combination of mistakes that had never been documented before. The coin was submitted to Anax, which was the premier grading service at that time, and after extensive authentication, including X-ray fluorescence testing to confirm the wrong planchet composition, the coin was certified as genuine and graded EF 40, meaning it had moderate circulation wear, but all the major details were still clearly visible. Samuel held onto the coin for several years, but in 1969 he received an offer he couldn't refuse. A prominent collector offered him $100,000 for the coin, which in 1969 dollars was an absolute fortune, equivalent to well over $1 million in today's money. The coin changed hands several more times over the decades, each time selling for higher and higher prices as its fame grew in the numismatic community, and by 2001, when it appeared at a major heritage auction, it sold for $6.8 million, shocking even experienced collectors with the intensity of the bidding. The second known example was discovered in 1978 by a teenager named Christopher Mills, who was searching through rolls of old nickels he'd purchased at a coin show in Phoenix, Arizona. Christopher had been collecting coins since he was 8 years old, and he'd save his allowance money to buy 10 rolls of Denver mint nickels from the 1940s, hoping to find some decent examples to fill holes in his album. When he came across the 1941 D error, he initially thought it was a damaged or fake coin, but something made him show it to his father, who was a chemist, and together they began researching what they'd found. After confirming it was genuine through professional authentication, Christopher's family decided to hold onto the coin, and Christopher took it to show and tell at his high school, where it caused an absolute sensation among his teachers and classmates. The Mills family held the coin for over 30 years, watching its value appreciate astronomically, and in 2010, they finally decided to sell it through a private broker. The final price was an astounding $32 million, and the buyer was rumored to be a technology billionaire who had recently become interested in rare coins. The third and final known example, which is also the finest known specimen and the one that holds a record price, was discovered in the most amazing way possible. In 2018, a woman named Patricia Gonzalez in Miami, Florida, inherited her father's estate, which included dozens of old coin albums that her father had maintained since the 1940s. Patricia had no particular interest in coins and was planning to sell the entire collection in bulk to a local dealer, but a friend convinced her to have the collection appraised first just to make sure there was nothing particularly valuable. When the appraiser began examining the albums, he came across a small envelope labeled Odd Nickels, 1941, and inside was a single 1941 D Jefferson nickel that made him literally gasp out loud. This coin was in stunning condition, graded MS 66 when it was later certified, meaning it had never been circulated and retained full mint luster with only the most minimal of contact marks. The error characteristics were all present and dramatically visible. The struck-through grease, giving the coin a distinctive ghostly appearance. the powerful double die, making every design element appear three-dimensional, and the wrong planchet creating the undersized, off-weight coin that marked it as something truly special. When this coin came up for auction in 2019, the collecting world went absolutely insane. Advanced publicity created a buzz that extended far beyond the usual numismatic circles, and mainstream media outlets, including CNN, The Wall Street Journal, and even international news services covered the story. The pre-auction estimate was between $35 and $50 million, which would have already made it the most valuable Jefferson nickel ever sold. But when the live bidding began, it became immediately clear that this was going to be something unprecedented. Bidders in the room, on the phones, and online drove the price higher and higher. 50 million, then 60 million, then 65 million, and finally, after a nail-biting final round of bidding between two phone bidders, the hammer fell at $74 million, shattering every previous record for a Jefferson nickel and establishing the 1941 D multi-error as one of the most valuable U.S. coins of any type. The buyer's identity has never been publicly confirmed, though rumors persist that it was purchased by an ultra-wealthy collector from the Middle East who plans to eventually donate it to a major museum. Now here's what should make your heart absolutely race with excitement. While only 3 examples have been certified and are currently known, error coin experts and numismatic researchers believe that it's possible, though admittedly unlikely, that 1 or perhaps 2 additional specimens could still exist undiscovered. Remember, these coins entered circulation in 1941, over 80 years ago, and they would have looked strange enough that some people who received them might have set them aside as curiosities, tossed them in a jar, or included them in a coin collection without fully understanding their significance. There are countless old coin collections sitting in closets, attics, safe deposit boxes, and estate holdings across America. And it's entirely possible that somewhere, someone has a 1941 D Jefferson nickel error sitting forgotten that could be worth $74 million or more. So what exactly should you look for if you're incredibly fortunate enough to have any nickels from 1941 with a D mint mark? First, and most obviously, size. A genuine example of this error will be noticeably smaller than a normal nickel because it was struck on a dime planchet. Place it next to a regular nickel, and the difference should be immediately apparent. The error coin will be roughly the same diameter as a modern dime, about 17 millimeters instead of the normal nickel's 21 millimeters. Second, weight. A normal nickel weighs exactly 5 grams, but these error coins weigh approximately 2.3 grams because they're on dime planchets, so if you have a coin scale, this is an immediate tell. Third, look for the doubling. Examine the date, the letters, Jefferson's profile, and on the reverse, Monticello's details, and you should see clear doubling of all major design elements, especially visible in good lighting at slight angles. Fourth, look for the grease strike through. Certain parts of the design will appear faint or missing, particularly in the fields and finer details, giving the coin an incomplete or ghostly appearance. If you find even one of these characteristics, especially the undersized diameter, you need to stop everything and get that coin authenticated immediately by a major grading service, because you could be holding one of the most valuable coins in existence. As we come to the end of this incredible journey through 4 of the most valuable Jefferson nickels ever discovered, I want you to really absorb what you've learned today. These aren't ancient coins from the 1700s or 1800s. These are modern coins from years that many people alive today remember. Coins that passed through ordinary circulation and could still be out there waiting to be discovered. The 1997 D worth $28 million. The 1980 D worth $45 million. The 1946 worth $62 million. And the 1941 D worth $74 million. These are real coins with real values that have sold at real auctions to real collectors. Your homework, starting right now, is to go through every single nickel you own, check every jar of change, look through any old coin collection from relatives, and examine each coin carefully for the errors we've discussed. Use a magnifying glass, a coin scale if you have one, and good lighting, and never assume a coin is worthless just because it looks odd or damaged. It could be the find of a lifetime. Remember, every single one of the record-setting coins we discussed today started out as ordinary pocket change that someone was lucky enough to examine closely. And there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't be the next lucky person to discover a multi-million-dollar treasure hiding in plain sight. Check your change, spread the word to friends and family, and never stop looking because the next great numismatic discovery could be sitting in your pocket right now. Thank you so much for watching, and remember to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss our next incredible coin discovery story. Your financial future might just depend on it.